Legislation is being developed to regulate offshore universities, a law revision commissioner to be put in place, and a number of local teachers now have a Master of Science degree in early childhood education.
Credible, balanced, committed. This is the CBC Evening News.
A very good evening to you with the Tuesday, October 9th edition of the CBC Evening News. I'm Ryan Broom. In our top story, legislation is coming to regulate offshore universities, especially medical universities wanting to set up in Barbados. This from Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley in the wake of the controversy surrounding the Washington University of Barbados based at Casa Grande Hotel in St. Philip. Now, late last week, government officials were called in after students said they were at the university without food and water. Speaking to the BLP Christchurch South Branch meeting over the weekend, Ms. Motley said Barbados needs to have certainty and transparency in all things relating to those universities.
What are the conditions under which universities are given a charter to operate? How they will be registered? What is the criteria used for registration? What is the criteria used for accreditation, or who should accredit? How you continue to monitor standards, Ralph? And how ultimately, what are the fiscal incentives and concessions that you will give to everybody? Not this one here and that one there and this one there. And that who are the entities that should be doing this?
And the Prime Minister says the government now has a humanitarian responsibility to the students.
We are working to see which schools that are in fact accredited here, because there are schools that are accredited and registered, and whether they can take some of them, and whether there are some who just want to go back home, because the truth is they are distressed and distraught. Secondly, we are also working to ensure, therefore, that we can speak to their governments.
Now, you may recall that the CEO of that university, Rao Venkata Gopi, is accused of issuing bad checks to two entities. He was remanded to prison on the indictable matter yesterday. Well, moves are being made to put a law revision commissioner in place. Attorney General Dale Marshall says that person's appointment is part of a larger plan to have a full law review commission. This will help to keep track of and make revisions and recommendations so legislators can remain current on trends in law. He was leading off debate on the second reading of the Law Revision and Law Reform Act 2018 in the House of Assembly.
Law revision, therefore, allows, Mr. Speaker, for a process where our statutes are constantly kept under review, and it is a process where you are principally concerned with the accuracy and the clarity of the law. As I said, some of the mistakes that may be made in drafting may only be discovered when brilliant lawyers like yourself start to argue the fine details of a particular section of an act before the court, and then you might discover clearly this was a mistake.
Now, Mr. Marshall has also put a case for the laws to be made available electronically.
I don't think we should do away with our paper volumes. Personally, I much prefer to read a statute. I much prefer to read anything in its physical form rather than its digital form. But at the same time, sir, having an electronic version of the laws of Barbados appeals to a whole new generation of practitioners. Sir, you know, I know many a young lawyer who, when I told them, pass me the laws of Barbados, it's almost like it was an alien document to them. They would more readily pull it up on their computer and work with it that way.
Now, in response, opposition leader Bishop Joseph Adderley cautioned government to keep the country's interests at heart when undertaking law revision and reform. He said with Barbados's current economic state, external entities may try to influence policy in Barbados under the threat of taking their business elsewhere. Bishop Atherley believes any changes to Barbados' laws should ultimately benefit its citizens.
Let's be very careful that our situation of need right now, as exists, financial and economic need in Barbados, our problems with debt and deficit and all of these things, let's be very careful that this does not bring us to the point where we make ourselves overly subject to influences such that rather than democratize further ownership structures in Barbados, we make them more entrenched and narrow to the detriment of the Barbadian public.
Bishop Atherley also called for stronger and more meaningful legislation to regulate the use of social media.
People in Barbados are every day defamed by means of social media. I dread the day when my day comes. That's a reality with which we have to deal, and defamation laws must be made appropriately applicable to the new tech environment.
In related news, Labour Minister Colin Jordan says many of the industrial relations issues which lead to strike action and go-slows come about as a result of a lack of knowledge of the laws by supervisors and management. And he says this usually happens because there is little access to critical pieces of legislation.
There are some, maybe a few, hopefully no more than a few, genuinely wicked employers. But I don't think that there are many. And so that is the reason why I didn't want to say most, because I haven't done any empirical research. But there is a lack of information on the part of many who are tasked with leading. And I want to submit, Mr. Speaker, that some of the reason for that may be the unavailability or the lack of ability to quickly reference particular pieces of legislation and particular sections of those pieces of legislation.
And Mr. Jordan says having the law in a place where it can be easily retrieved from someone's cell phone or computer is a step in the right direction.
Having the legislation online in a place where you are sure that the version is credible, and that is what this bill speaks to, ensuring that the version that appears in the place where it will be reposited online is a credible version, an authentic version. Having that version of the legislation available to supervisors and managers places them in a better position to respond to challenges that may arise in the workplace.
And one of the island's Queen's Counsel says law reform is critical to a modern Barbados. Member of Parliament for Christchurch South, Ralph Thorne, is happy government is moving to update the country's legislation. He has, however, called for the courts to stop relying so heavily on the judgments passed in international jurisdictions to influence their decisions.
We have gone to the courts in this country and in this region, and before we have presented on what is the law, too many of us as lawyers have tried to determine what has been the law in England, what has been the law in Canada, what has been the law in New Zealand and Australia, and even South Africa, before we can ourselves say what is our law. In other words, we have been tied too often and quite unhappily to the laws of other countries. And even judges have found themselves, I think, on occasion, excessively influenced by the declarations of law in England.
In other news, Barbados and its sister states in CARICOM place great importance on the promotion and protection of the rights of children. That's been made clear at the United Nations in a statement from the 14-member community delivered by Barbados' permanent representative to the UN, Liz Thompson. She also says progress has been made on the issue globally within the context of the Sustainable Development Goals.
The various reports submitted under this agenda item indicate that the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the optional protocols thereto, for the most part, enjoy majority support. Similarly, the reports indicate that there have been improvements in the social, economic, and political investments made by member states towards fulfilling the right to education for the girl child. The inclusion of a distinct SDG targeting violence against children is a historic feat. There is broad agreement among us that children are not soldiers. States are seeking to close loopholes that allow for the exploitation of children. CARICOM has happily borne witness to these achievements in other regions and in our own.
Ambassador Thompson notes, however, that more needs to be done to safeguard the world's children.
Despite these considerable successes, however, Mr. Chairman, UNICEF informs us that more than 650 million children live in 52 countries that are off track, or at least two-thirds of the child-related SDG indicators will not be met in those countries, for which data is available. And over 500 million children live in 64 countries that lack sufficient data for useful assessment of their status. To have sustained progress, reliable data is needed, including in the CARICOM region.
State-owned enterprises will be modernized as part of government's BERT program. Senior Technical Advisor with the IMF to the Barbados government, Dr. Kevin Greenidge, explains the program will make those agencies more viable. He was speaking last evening at an economic symposium at the Cahill School of Business.
On the SOE side, the effort is really to modernize and improve it so that we are able to take Barbados where we want to go, but we're not doing it in a manner that will mean it will go back where it was. To do that, you need to restructure processes and to induce technology and digitalization within the process of what we do to get there. And this process, as I speak, is ongoing.
And Dr. Greenidge also reiterated that the program will help Barbados address its debt problems.
This program, the Barbados Economic Recovery Transformation Program, changed a lot on the expenditure side. There have been some revenue enhancing over the 18 months, which is very critical in terms of any program. We expect to improve revenues by 1.3% of GDP, but we are going to trim on the expenditure side at least 7.1% of GDP. That's on the expenditures. They're expenditure-driven.
Employees of the Barbados Statistical Service were back on the job today. Yesterday, they stood outside the Baobab Towers where the department is housed, complaining about a foul odor. Several of them reportedly sought medical attention. BSS Director Aubrey Brown says investigations are continuing to find the source of the problem. He also revealed the Safety and Health Committee of the Ministry of Labor and the Baobab Towers property managers were looking into the matter. Well, 28 local teachers can now boast of having completed their Master of Science degree in early childhood education. They're the latest to graduate through the partnership between the Ministry of Education and Boston University's Wheelock School of Education and Human Development. They graduated over the weekend in a ceremony at the Derek Smith School. Deputy Chief Education Officer Joy Adamson told the teachers they will be expected to share their knowledge through the system.
The ministry will be calling on you to bring your newfound knowledge into our nursery sections, nursery schools, and general education sections. I know sometimes persons say they're just doing it to get a master's, but I know none of these 28 lights here did it for that. You did it to give back. And I know that from your knowledge gained, and I heard about the presentations that you made over the last 2 days, I know that you have something to give back to the educational system, and we will be calling on you to do such.
And Deputy Dean of the school, Dr. David Chard, delivered the commencement address. He told the graduates there are many lessons to be learned from their time of study, but taking responsibility for their communication is especially critical to the teaching profession.
Listening to our colleagues and our students and their families makes us more effective and our children better able to thrive. Second, I learned that inclusion is a state of mind and can result in everyone having a better educational experience and a better life. Whether we differ by gender, language, culture, skin color, abilities, religion, or sexual orientation, we all prosper when we're included.
Meanwhile, class valedictorian Tricia Austin says it's time for more parents to get involved in their children's schools. Ms. Austin, a teacher at the Reynold Weeks Primary, says educators must begin to use their research and experience to influence policies that can help students fulfill their potential.
The creation of strong home-school relationships must not be left to chance or to the whims of individual administrations, as we found to be the current case through our field research. Setting and implementing such policy will ensure that each family and each educator has equal opportunity to forge meaningful relationships to the benefit of student, teacher, family, school, and community.
Ms. Austin adds that her fellow teachers have also recognized the need for and have gone about scheduling time for play amongst the youngest students.
This is no easy undertaking, as it has been and will be met with opposition from not only colleagues who, having a limited idea of true play, believes it takes away from valuable teaching time, but also from parents who may already believe that their little ones play too much and were dependent on the school to settle them down to the serious business of learning.
Some big birthday news now. Jeanette Callender is the island's newest centenarian. She celebrated her birthday last evening surrounded by family, friends, and loved ones at the Christchurch Parish Center. Miss Callender has 4 children, 2 daughters and 2 sons. She has 9 grands and 16 great-grandchildren. One of her daughters, Pamela Williams, says she worked as a seamstress before she went to England in the 1960s. She returned to Barbados in 1989. The centenarian is a devoted member of the St. Bartholomew Church.
My fondest memory of her is when I was a child before I went to England as well. She was always there for us as our mother should be.
And we also wish her a very happy birthday. Well, Barbadians will be treated to a taste of Japan this weekend as the Embassy of Japan and Bonsai Barbados gives them a chance to see and experience Japanese culture up close. Rosemary Allen reports.
This weekend, the Japanese Embassy will be reaching out to Barbadians to experience 2 significant aspects of Japanese culture, bonsai and origami. The event will be held at the Queen's Park Steel Shed. If you're not very familiar with the culture of Japan, these 2 words might be new to you. But simply put, bonsai is the art of growing trees in a pot and preventing them from reaching their normal size. The bonsai on display at the Steel Shed will be those crafted by Barbados' only bonsai club, Bonsai Barbados. Origami, on the other hand, is a Japanese art of folding paper into decorative shapes and figures. Not only will there be displays of origami, but there will be 2 workshops on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon and Sunday at 3 in the afternoon, so we all can learn the art of making decorative shapes from flat pieces of paper. This will all be on show at the Queen's Park Steel Shed, and it starts at 6 in the morning and ends at 6 in the evening. It's a unique opportunity for you to experience the beauty, exquisiteness, and simple nature of Japanese art and culture. Rosemary Allen, CBC News.